Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my July 2024 reading vlog. It is already about 8 days into the month and I have, hi Gus, say hi. No, he only wants to interrupt. You just want to interrupt? Uh-huh. So anyway, as I was saying, it is about 8 days into the month and I forgot to film my intro clip. So this is my intro clip. So for this month, for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, I will be reading Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I'm already 100 pages into it, and I'm really liking it so far. It is about a family who has to move house and move to California during the Dust Bowl, which took place during the American Great Depression. It has a lot of dialogue and a lot of different character perspectives and a lot of chapters that are just essentially interludes to the description of the American dream, and that already in the 1930s being published then, that's insane. So the criticism of the American dream has been going on the entire time. So far it is pretty interesting. As for what I will be reading next, I am going to yet another cottage with my father, and I have some comics that my sibling has suggested me to read. So I will potentially be reading Teen Titans Judas Contract, Batman, A Death in the Family. I will be reading the Mark Waid and Dan Mora World's Finest, Volume 1. I have Robin's Being Robin by Tim Seeley and a bunch of others. And then finally I have a Robin and Batman by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. So we will see how I feel about those. It's very scattered but very Robin based, I've noticed. So join me at the cottage for my Robin readathon. Stay tuned. You're silly. I am currently outside because my mom is sick and I have no privacy in the house. However, I am currently in my backyard, surrounded by retired neighbors who just love to turn their saws on and off all day for no reason. I'm very, very sweaty, so let's just do a super quick update on what I have read. As you can see, when I, in my last clips, I went to another cottage and I read 4 comics. So I will do my quick reviews on each of them. Robin's Being Robin by Tim Seeley et al. Is only getting 2 stars because it was just very fanficky. It was very Wayne Family Adventures, and I don't like those characterizations for the Robins. I think they should be able to grow and change and develop, and not just stay the exact same all the time. Second, let that car go by. Second, I read Robin and Batman by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and this is getting 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I think the art is very different, very watercolor, very interesting, and it's a very specific personal character story between Dick Grayson, Batman, and Alfred, and I love those kind of stories. It's pretty much based off of the Robin Year One style, where little Dick Grayson is just learning how to be Robin, how to be Dick Grayson, and how to deal with his grief and living with Batman. So very, very good story overall. I then read the new Teen Titans, The Judas Contract by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. This is also getting 2 stars from me. While the story, if it was just written down, is very compelling and interesting, the execution and the way that all the characters are written is very, very bad. Not just because of the 70s and or 80s slang, but because Dick Grayson fully becomes Nightwing in this story, and he's barely in it. This is not about him. It's very, very bad. You know, obviously Donna Troy marrying a full-grown adult is pretty gross, but also Slade's relationship with Tara is also gross, but, you know, he's the villain. He's meant to be bad. Ultimately, this story could be interesting, and I think they treated it a little bit better on the 2003 Teen Titans. So ultimately, it's garbage day, so every truck is outside. This was a great day to film. Ultimately, this was a disappointment, even though it's a very famous story from the Teen Titans. And finally, I read Batman Superman World's Finest, Volume 1, The Devil Nezha by Mark Waid and Dan Mora. And Jesus Christ. And I am giving this book 3 stars. While I did enjoy the art, of course, by Dan Mora is beautiful. I just think that World's Finest style comics, where they deal with a lot of magic and a lot of time travel and a lot of parallel universes, just isn't for me. I understand this is exactly what World's Finest is supposed to be, so of course, if you like this sort of thing, definitely it's going to be great. It just wasn't for me. I think I'm more into just Batman stories. I don't know if I like Superman that well, but every character worked off of each other well, and I think this was a very good comic for what it was. I will just quickly say I also finished The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, and that will be getting 3 stars. I will be talking about it more in my vlog dedicated to the 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime books, but just to say that I think it was very, very well done. It was very upsetting. It's about, you know, the depression and struggling to get a job and how the banks run everything, and you know, how things are getting pricier and people are getting paid way less, but of course that's only a problem in the 1930s, right? That could only be a problem then. It could never be a problem now. Of course, of course. And then at some point this month, I would like to get to A Death in the Family, the very famous Batman comic where Jason dies, so stay tuned for that. Okay, it is really, really, really hot in here. I don't have my fan on. I don't have the AC on. We're going to be very, very quick with this. Now, I am currently I'm listening to the audiobook of Perfume, the Story of a Murderer by Patrick Süskind. I am currently about 70% of the way in it, and I'm really, really enjoying it so far. I've heard of this story in the past because people were talking highly of it, and I think there was a movie in like 2009 or 2010 or something. I didn't really pay attention to anything there, but now that I'm reading it, I'm really, really enjoying it. It is about a character named Nguyen who is like barely human, but he has this intense sense of smell, and he's using it and to become a great perfumer ultimately, but also at one point he flees society because humans stink so much, and he has this high sensitivity to scent, and good for him. He's brave enough to leave society for that. Good for him.
honestly, I think a lot of people think that this story ultimately doesn't work out because he is not charismatic, he is not attractive, and he is simply evil. He's the personification of evil. Many people have read this to be that he is, like, in fact, the Antichrist because he's just so inhuman. He lacks assent, he lacks emotion, he lacks humanity, etc. I think a lot of people just don't get that this isn't about, like, him and, like, him being, like, a compelling character. It's like society and humanity and how evil can corrupt it, and the beauty of scent and how there is a huge variety of scent in the world, good or bad, and there's a good balance, and it's what makes us human and stuff. Brilliant descriptions of scent. I'm really enjoying it. It's really making me either feel sick or making me feel, like, elated because, like, oh, that smell is probably so great. And, like, the writing and description of scent and memory and connection to breath, I'm really enjoying thus far. So I am almost done that book. I'm sure I won't have any huge changes about my final thoughts, but you will hear my rating in the wrap-up, of course. Now, I plan to read at least one more book this month, so we shall see what that is, so stay tuned.
Hello, this is just a quick update to say that I have picked my final book that I'm reading for the month, and that is Mrs. S by K. Patrick. This is a new debut novel, I believe, by the author, and I only heard about it because of someone adding it to their want to read list on Goodreads. So it is about a woman who takes a job at a British boarding school. She is Australian and she is a butch lesbian, and she finds herself attracted to the headmaster's wife, that being Mrs. S. They so far have done a lot together, and there's a lot of descriptions of, like, her lesbianism, her gender identity, and her shame. So far, the contents of the novel haven't been too difficult to sift through. However, the layout of the novel is incredibly difficult to read. It's one of those ones where it's just paragraphs. There aren't paragraph changes between dialogue, and there's no quotations for dialogue, so it just takes a little bit longer and more concentration to read it, but of course I'm getting through it just fine. I'm about halfway through right now. It is a short novel, and so far it is all right. I do hope that it does end up going somewhere a little bit further, but the relationships between the characters have been very interesting, as well as the narrator's interpretation of her sexuality, of her attraction, of her connections to both the teachers and the students at the school have been very, very interesting. So stay tuned for my final thoughts in the wrap-up soon. Okay, here we are at the final wrap-up for the month. So I had a pretty scattered and pretty busy month, but I still managed to read 3 regular novels and 5 comics. So let's just get into those right away. So for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, I read The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, and I'm going to be giving that book 3.5 stars. I thought it was a wonderful depiction of the Great Depression in the United States during the 1930s, and I think a lot of the messages and what they were trying to say resonates with modern society as well, especially with the way that the cost of living has gone up and there are less jobs and people are really fighting for a job that pays even less than what they're worth. I thought the family dynamics and a lot of their ideologies were very interesting, and I thought that the descriptions of the way people dreamed and the way people saw religion and the way people saw work and worth, very, very important stuff there. So while it wasn't my favorite book I've read in the world, I thought it had a lot to say and it was very interesting. Up next now is all of my comics. I read a lot of Robin comics this month. It was a very Robin-y month. So the first one that I read was Robins Being Robin by Tim Seeley et al. And this is unfortunately getting 2 stars from me because it's written very fanficky and not in a good way. I love fanfiction. That's not meant to be an insult. This just lacks anything. Fanfiction tends to grasp onto one character trait for each of the characters in a story. Like, all Jason talks about in this is dying. All Stephanie talks about in this is that her father's a criminal. All Dick gets to do in the story is be the kind-hearted and kind of dopey leader. And Damien is just, of course, the bratty little kid in this, but it's just all very stereotypical. The idea of them all talking about how being the Robin affected them could have been interesting, but it's just too plain, too simple, and too juvenile. So 2 stars on this one. I then read Robin and Batman by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and I really, really enjoyed this one. This one's getting 4 stars from me. I think I just like the idea of Dick being a Robin as a little kid. Oh my god, something on my shelf just broke. So as I was saying, I think I just enjoy the idea of Dick being the first Robin when he's a kid and just learning how to deal with Batman and Alfred and school and being a crime fighter. I really, really enjoy this concept. I have read this concept before in Robin Year 1, a little bit in Dark Victory, and I just really, really enjoyed this comic, and the art was beautiful. I then read The New Teen Titans, The Judas Contract by Marv, Wolfman, and George Perez, and this is getting 2 stars from me. The ideas in here are very, very interesting. The idea that Tara joins the Teen Titans but was actually secretly working for Slade and ends up betraying them. Interesting stuff. However, the execution was really, really bad. The slang was really, really bad. The characterization was very, very poor. The art was just fine. The way that the characters are written to be speaking was just annoying and crazy, and a lot of it was tell, don't show, and Dick didn't really have a role in this, and he really should have. So yes, this is a very important story in comics history, and I honestly think Teen Titans did it a little bit better. I then read Batman Superman, World's Finest by Mark Waid, Dan Mora, and Tamra Bonvillain, and I'm giving this 3 stars. I just think that Superman type stories with time travel and aliens and dimensions and all that funky stuff just isn't for me. The art in here is gorgeous and beautiful, and I think this was a very, very well done World's Finest story, because I know these are the types of stories that Batman and Superman get into. It was really, really nice and refreshing, but I just think that the magic and dimensions and stuff just isn't my type of comic. And finally, for the comics, I read Batman, A Death in the Family by Jim Starlin, Marv Wolfman, and others. This is the story where Jason dies. Everyone knows it. I thought it was pretty good. It is a 3-star from me. I just knew exactly what this was. I have heard of the story before. I've watched Under the Red Hood. The differences in this story make it a bit worse. Joker becoming the ambassador to Iran was a little odd, and I didn't like any of that. And the idea that he has diplomatic immunity and can't be punished for killing Jason, they could have done that a different way. But yes, very effective and very important comic, obviously, because it changed everything and it allowed little Tim Drake to show up as Robin. I really enjoyed that story. That is included in this as well. and I thought this was a very well done story. And finally, my two final books that I read for this month. I listened to the audiobook of Perfume, the Story of a Murderer by Patrick Süskind, and translated by John E. Woods. And this is getting 4 stars from me. I thought that the language in this novel was incredible, just the way that scents are described in society and humanity, and all of that. Very, very well done. I love the descriptions. They were beautiful. This story is bonkers, and I kind of liked it. It kept being bonkers. Like, the main character was literally born in garbage, and like he killed women and, you know, took all of their scent off of them as he murdered them, and like all the oil out of their skin, you know, gross stuff. The book ends in an orgy and a suicide. It's great. I really liked it. And finally, I read Mrs. S by K. Patrick. I believe this story will be getting just a 3-star from me. While the layout of the book made me just have to concentrate a little bit harder, it didn't take away from the story. I thought it was very well done. The descriptions of sexuality, shame, of society, how people interact with you, the embarrassment with your own body, and a little bit about gender identity was very, very well done. I really enjoyed that aspect. The book went exactly as I predicted it would be, but that did not take away from the book. Sometimes guessing what happens in a book isn't disappointing. You just know exactly what's going to go on, and that means that the arc of the story was executed well and ended well. I'm glad that I read the book, and I would like to try out more stories like this that describe things like this. I thought it was very, very well done, and it did not shy away from the fact that this book is a lesbian story. Lots of stories like to be like, oh, it's sapphic, oh, it's WLW. No, this is a lesbian story. Lesbian. It was great. It was from the main character's perspective, and she is a straight up butch lesbian and talks of gender, talks of sexuality, and all of that. Excellent. So I was glad to have read it. Okay, and that was the month of July. I'm really hoping next month is going to be more fun and more easy. I'm looking forward to what I read next. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.